of religious. And so we have to be able to, as we learn Bava Kama, to see it on the two levels. On the one side, there's the legal structure, the contractual structure, that which you're entitled to from one another. And on the other hand, there's the Chassidut area. What are the finer aspects of it? What are we meant to do? Are we meant to rely on the legal system? As we've worked through the Masechta Bava Kama so far in the Matmonim, I've been making the point that the legal system is only there when the ethical system fails. Strictly speaking, if the ethical system was working, if everybody was keeping a high standard of ethics, you wouldn't need a legal system. The legal system is there because the ethical system sometimes fails. So as we learn the Zikin, it's not about becoming entrenched in our legal rights and insisting on them and hiding behind them. It's also at least as much about becoming familiar with what's expected of us as human beings, what's expected of us as Jewish people, what are the higher levels of ethics that we're meant to be observing, and in each of the pieces of Gemara to be able to see that and understand that dimension of it too. So in this morning's stuff, and I'll share the screen. Yeah. So we're learning Daf Tet, and the pieces, the underlying principle we're learning about is the idea of hidur mitzvah, the idea of investing even more in a mitzvah than the minimum requirements of that mitzvah. So this idea that the Torah expects more than the minimum from us. The Torah gives us the minimum because that's how you preserve a society. But the Torah expects us as individuals to go way beyond that. And that's a theme throughout Bava Kama. Here, we're specifically learning it with respect to hidur mitzvah, to building the quality of a mitzvah, not just the quantity of the mitzvot. It's not just about how many mitzvot am I doing or what mitzvot am I keeping. It's not just about how many pages of Gemara am I learning and how quickly am I learning it. It's about the quality of those mitzvot as well. And that the part of the quality of the mitzvah entails the beauty with which we perform that mitzvah, that aesthetics is a part of Jewish life. And we see the extent to which aesthetics is a part of Jewish life in this Masechta. Of course, we understand, and this is a good time of year to be talking about the difference between the Greek philosophy and ours. The Greek philosophy, we object to the Greek philosophy not because they see the value in aesthetics. Our objection to the Greek philosophy is that they see ethics as an independent value, as something that is worthy of worship in and of itself. And that isn't the case with us at all. Aesthetics is a part integrated into our service of Hashem, that we serve Hashem in ways that are beautiful and meant to be beautiful. We'll see examples of that. So it starts off with the pasuk in Parashat Mishpatim, where we learn the din of shein v'regel. Shein v'regel is the damage that my ox can cause through its normal behavior. So we're not talking about doing something abnormal, like an ox going and goring other oxen and causing damage that way. Just its normal instinctual behavior. If my ox walks over your field, that's instinctual. You can't punish it for doing that. That's what oxen do. If my ox is in your field and he grazes and eats up your produce, you can't punish the ox for that. That's what oxen do. They graze. I, the owner of the ox, am culpable because I allowed my ox to wander into your property, knowing that it's normal for an ox to do those kinds of things. And so the pasuk says, "Ki yav'er ish sadeh cherem," when a person causes a field or vineyard to be consumed, b'shilachet be'iro, by sending in his cattle with v'er b'sdeh acher, and the cattle consume in somebody else's field, meitav sadehu, meitav karmo yishalem. The Torah then uses a difficult phrase which is important in Bava Kama. The damages have to be paid from the best of the person's fields. And what that means is, if my cattle cause damage to your field, you want to claim damages from me, I don't have the cash with which to compensate you. You're allowed to take my fields. You're allowed to take part of my property to the amount that you're entitled to in terms of damages. But now what happens if I have different fields? If I have a property in Arkansas, in the United States, and I have a property in Baltimore, and I have a property on Fifth Avenue, New York, and you've been damaged, and you come along and say, you know what, the property I want to take is a piece of your Fifth Avenue, New York property. And I'm trying to say to you, rather take the Arkansas property. I can give you 10 acres in Arkansas rather than a few square feet on Fifth Avenue. It's worth the same. And you say, no, I really would rather have a few square feet on Fifth Avenue, or a share in that property on Fifth Avenue. The din is meitav sadeo. I have to give of the best of my property. You're entitled to the very best. And that's an interesting halakha. Why should that be? At the end of the day, I've got to pay. We get that. My cattle have caused $1,000, so $10,000 worth of damage to your field. An entire herd of animals walked into your field and they ate up your produce, caused $10,000 of damage. I've got to pay you. I get it. If I don't have the cash, you have a lien on my property. You can actually sell my property. You can take my property and realize the cash from my property. But that I have to allow you to take the best of my property. Why is that? Why is that important, and why is that even so? In a similar verse where we're talking about the damage of bor is where one does damage not in your property. It's a shein and regel, where my cattle naturally graze in your field and they cause damage that way. That's in your field. Bor is a form of damage that I cause in the Reshut Harabim, in the public domain. So if I dig a hole, I dig a ditch in the street in the public domain, and somebody or an animal falls into that ditch, I am responsible for that damage, although it's public domain. It's not your property. It's not my property. And in that case, it says, Ba'ala bor yishalem kesev yashiv leba'alav, ameti elo. If your ox fell into my trench that I dug in the public domain, then the owner of the pit, that's me who created the pit, has to pay with money. I have to return money to the owner, and I can keep the dead cow. So once again, if your ox falls into the hole, your ox is worth $500. I pay you the full $500, and I keep the ox. I can use the leather. I can sell it. I can do whatever I want with it. And Rashi explains that Yashiv is lerabot shaveh kesef v'afilu subin. An interesting law. When it comes to this halakha, we learn in the Gemara, I can pay you with money. I don't have to pay you with my field. And if I do pay you with shaveh kesef, if I do pay you with something that is worth money, not money itself. So best would be if I pay you cash. But if I can't pay you cash, in the first case, we talked about paying you with property. In this case, I pay you with some other form of property, in this case, even movable property. So I could give you my watch and tell you, you know what, my watch is worth at least as much as the damage I owe you. Take my watch, sell it, do what you want to, and we're done. But I don't have to give you my watch. I could even give you subin, and subin means like it's oat bran. It's like the cheapest of cheap things. It's just giving you some waste product that I don't really need or won't really use, but it has value. So instead of giving you $500 of cash or a watch, each of which would fit into your pocket quite neatly, I deliver to your house a truckload of oat bran. And I say, this is $500 worth of oat bran. And I'm allowed to do that. Kesev yashiv leba'alav. We learn that from the word yashiv leba'alav. So our Gemara starts. That's the background in the Chumash. Our Gemara starts where Abaya asks Rava a question. Abaya and Rava, as you know, are the two most important protagonists in the Gemara. We have them many times in the Gemara, and they have different worldviews, which lead them to understand the Torah in different ways, and they often compare their different perspectives. And Abaya says to Rava, I don't understand these two psukim that we've just learned. These two verses seem to be in contradiction. Because first we say, Meitav sadeh meitav kamo yishaleh, meitav in midi achrini lo. The first thing we say is, I've got to pay with my property on Fifth Avenue, the best property I've got, not with something less than that. Tanya, on the other hand, Yashiv l'rabot shaveh kesef afilu subin. And on the other hand, I can pay you if I need to, even with really low grade property, even a bag of oat bran would do. The Gemara concludes, Lo kashya kan midato kan bal korcho. The difference is if the person voluntarily agrees to pay or is forced to pay. If he's forced to pay, he has to pay from the best of his property. If he pays voluntary, then it's less so. On this statement of Meitav, Amar Rabbi Zera, Amar Rav Huna, the Gemara then further on the page goes into a different topic altogether, and we'll discuss at the end why this is even relevant to our Gemara. So far, this section of the Gemara is talking about damages, and specifically talking about the damages that an ox causes to other people, and here we're talking about the ox causing damage through grazing and walking, or a pit causing damage in the second case. The obligation to pay, one pasuk says you pay with the best of your property, the other pasuk says you can pay with any old thing. How do you reconcile them? And then all of a sudden Rav Huna says, Amar Rabbi Zera, Amar Rav Huna. Rabbi Zera teaches us in the name of his teacher Rav Huna, b'mitzvah ad shlish. When it comes to mitzvot, you've got to be prepared to pay up to a third. By shlish, what does it mean, a third? Ilema shlish beito. If we say that means a third of your total assets, does that mean that if you have 3 mitzvot, you've got to pay all your assets? What does it mean, a third? You've got to spend up to a third on a mitzvah. So Chanukah is coming. Do I have to spend up to a third of my assets on buying a menorah and Chanukah lights? On Sukkot, do I have to spend a third of my assets on a lulav and esrog? That doesn't make any sense. Elo Amar Rabbi Zera, but explains Rabbi Zera, what my teacher Rav Huna meant was that behidur mitzvah, that when you have a chance to add to the quality of the mitzvah, ad shlish b'mitzvah, you go up to a third more than the mitzvah itself would have cost you. So if you could buy a beautiful lulav and etrog for $100, and for $130 you can get one that's even more beautiful, then you buy the one that's more beautiful for $130. If the more beautiful one costs $140, you don't need to buy it. And this is quite interesting because it parallels research that's done in business, and some of you might be aware of it, that a good salesman can generally persuade a buyer to increase his spend by up to a third if there's perceived quality. So if you've bought an economy class ticket for $600, if I can show you that business class or first class is a perceived quality that's better, unless you're wealthy and the money doesn't make a big difference to you, I could get you to go up another $200. You'll pay $800 for a better seat, for a better experience, but you won't pay $1,000 for a better experience, again, unless you're very wealthy. So this formula is quite an interesting one, that it's not unreasonable to expect a person to spend up to a third more on something of higher value, something of greater quality. And this applies in business, just as it applies in mitzvahs, just as it applies in everything else. You go to buy yourself a suit of clothes, and if a good salesman says, I see you looking at the suit of clothes, it costs $1,000, it's a very nice suit of clothes, but for a little bit more, you could get something incredibly better quality. Let me show you. Put this one on, feel what it's like, touch the fabric, and it's another $250. We'll tend to say, okay, we'll go for the better one. That's the ad shlish. The same with the mitzvah. We should treat our mitzvahs the same as we treat any other investment experience. When we're investing in an object and something that's going to give us pleasure or something of value, we should be willing to go the extra third. And the Rav Ashi questions, how do you calculate this third? Is it plus a third, or is it a third of the total? And the Gemara doesn't come to a conclusion on that. And then the Gemara says again, in the name of Rabbi Zera, ad shlish mishalo. This is really interesting. Up to a third, what this means, that you've got to spend up to a third, means up to a third you pay for yourself. So if the mitzvah cost is $1,000 and you spend another $200 to $250 to get a better quality, that's mishalo. We'll see what that means. Mikan ve'elich mishal HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But if you spend more than a third, Hashem pays for that. You don't have to worry. That's not coming out of your pocket. So what does all this mean? Does it mean we should go above the third? Does it mean we may go above the third? Does it mean we should not go above a third? What does this all mean? It's all very obscure. And we have different approaches here. We're going to learn Rashi, Tosfot, and Rabbeinu Hananel. Let's start with Rashi. Rashi says, Behidur mitzvah ad shlish, b'mitzvah, she'im motzei beit sifrei torot liknot. Imagine, says Rashi, you're looking to buy a Sefer Torah. And the scribe, the sofer, shows you two examples. This is Sefer Torah A, and this is Sefer Torah B. Ve'echad hadur michaviro. And the scribe shows you how Sefer Torah B is more beautiful than Sefer Torah A. The way the letters are written, the straightness of the columns, the straightness of the lines, the evenness with which it's written. It's just a more beautiful product. Which one do you buy? Yosif shlish hadamim v'yikach et hadur, explains Rashi. You add up to a third. Again, if you were going to spend $10,000 on the Sefer Torah, and the beautiful one is another $2,000 or $2,500 or even $3,000, you go for the beautiful one. If it's $4,000 more, so that it would cost you $14,000, you don't have to go to it. Why do you spend the extra? Because of Zeh Keli Va'anveu, which means Hitna'eh lefanav b'mitzvot. And I want you to notice this word hitna'eh, which is in the hitpa'el form. Those of you who are familiar with the Hebrew grammar, hitna'eh doesn't mean just buy a more beautiful Sefer Torah. It means hitna'eh, make yourself more beautiful with mitzvot. Beautify yourself. Raise your own standard. Elevate yourself in the way you do mitzvot. And the way you do that is by investing more in the beauty of the object. You're elevating yourself as well. It's not just about the object. It's not just about having a more beautiful Sefer Torah. It's about you being the kind of person who invests in beauty of mitzvot. It's about you being the kind of person who's willing to put more into a mitzvah of greater quality. That's the hitna'eh. You become somebody more beautiful. You become somebody more evolved and developed in the way you do your mitzvot. Lulav na'eh, talit na'eh, tzitzit na'eh. Different examples of where you could find yourself spending more on on such a mitzvah. Bikan ve'elach, mashi yosif behidur yoter al shlish. This is a fascinating Rashi. Look what Rashi says. If you spend more, so the sofer says to you, this Sefer Torah is $10,000. I've got a more beautiful one, which is $20,000. And if you do that, yipara lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'chayav. That means Hashem will repay you. You won't be out of pocket because you're spending on a mitzvah. That's wonderful. You're not spending the money on an item of clothing. You're not spending the money on a new car. You're spending the money on a Sefer Torah. So Hashem will repay you, but He'll repay you in this world during your life. Because that action, going more than a third, is an act of ostentation. And this is a really interesting idea. So for a person to say, I'm willing to spend $10,000 on a Sefer Torah, stretching himself to spend $13,000 on a more beautiful Sefer Torah, that's something amazing. And that's called Hidur Mitzvah. But if he's going to go to $30,000 when he really can only afford $10,000, why are you doing that? That becomes ostentation. The person has a golden etrog box, and he's not a wealthy person. He's an ordinary person. What have you got a golden etrog box? You've got a nice etrog. You've got a nice lulav. You've got a nice box for your etrog. Why a golden one? That becomes ostentatious. So Rashi explains the Gemara. Hashem will pay for that. It's not a bad thing. It's okay. You're spending the money on an esrog box rather than on something else. That's great. But you're doing it for ostentation. You're not doing it for the mitzvah. If you're doing it for the mitzvah, you would go up to a third. There's no need to go beyond that. To stretch yourself up to a third is already considered a wonderful act of mitzvah. There's no reason to do anything more than that. Fred asked the question, if you spend a third more for a Hidur mitzvah, should you do that or take the extra funds and give it to a per person, which is preferable? A great question, and we're going to see that hidur applies in mitzvahs of tzedakah as well. And probably the answer to that, just off the top of my head, Rav Atlas might have a different answer. Probably the answer would be to rather do the tzedakah, because then you're doing two mitzvot. So you only invest in the quality when you're doing the quantity. You don't invest in quality at the expense of the quantity. So if you've got an opportunity to do tzedakah and to do lulav and esrog, and you've got a very nice lulav and esrog, there's nothing wrong with it. To go and spend more on the lulav and esrog when you could be giving that money to somebody who needs the tzedakah, that would also be a problem. And that's part of the reason that the Torah caps it and encourages us not to go beyond the third. It says Rashi, Hashem will repay you, but don't think you'll get extra olam haba for spending more than the third. You will get extra olam haba for giving the tzedakah. That's a mitzvah that deserves olam haba. But for spending a whole lot more money on a mitzvah which you're already fine with, you've got what you need, that level of hidur is not required or even recommended according to Rashi. Now, Tosfot has a different view of what hidur mitzvah means. So remember, according to Rashi, hidur mitzvah means aesthetics. So for Rashi, let's look at it. When in Ra'anana, when you talk about mahadrin, what are you talking about? If I say, are you mahadrin, what am I asking? Where you buy your meat, I'm probably asking, right? I'm asking something about kashrus if I'm asking about mahadrin. According to Rashi, mahadrin would mean I buy the most beautiful cuts of meat I can afford. I buy good meat. I buy beautiful meat. I go to a clean restaurant, to a clean butchery. I go where I worry about my health as well. I get organic meat. I get free-range meat. That would be hidur according to Rashi. But according to Tosfos, hidur is different. According to Tosfos, Ad Shlish b'mitzvah Tosfos says, Perush im matzah etrog ke'egoz k'mo sheshiaru chachamim. If somebody found an etrog that's as big as a nut, it's the minimum requirement of an etrog. It just passes minimum specifications. Ve'echad gadol mimenu, and you have the opportunity of buying one that's bigger, that's more safely within the specifications of an etrog. Yikneho, you should buy the more expensive one. So according to Tosfot, hidur is in the meticulousness with which you keep the mitzvah. Do you go for the minimum or do you do more than the minimum? That's what hidur is. So according to Tosfos, then the way we talk in Ra'anana is right, according to Tosfos. So next time somebody asks you if you keep mahadrin or if you have mahadrin food or you eat mahadrin, you should ask them, do you mean according to Rashi or according to Tosfos? Are you asking me according to Rashi or Tosfos on Bava Kama Daf Tes? That will put them in their place very quickly, won't it? You say, if you're asking me according to Rashi, do I buy the best meat I can buy? Yes, I do. If you're asking me, do I buy the most kosher, the most meticulous? Maybe I don't, because I go like Rashi. But if I would go like Tosfot, then yes, I would want the meat that has the highest standards of hashgacha, the highest standards of hechsher. I would be very meticulous about that. That's what it means. And therefore, says Tosfos, Hashem pays you in this world and the next world. It's a proper mitzvah because you're investing this money not in ostentation. There's nothing ostentatious about spending money on a mitzvah that is more meticulous. So if I'm buying an esrog for $100, and it's a nice esrog, and they show me a massive esrog for $150, and I buy the massive esrog, Rashi says, no, you're going for ostentation. No, you're trying to impress people. This is not about Hashem. But if I use Tosfos' approach, and the salesman says to me, this esrog for $100, it's a great esrog. I've got another esrog. It looks the same from the outside, but it's different. The standards of kashrut, the hechsherim with which it comes, the orchard from which it was taken, the person who grew it, different level of esrog. That's the kind of hidur Tosfos is talking about. So when you're talking about aesthetics and external manifestations of hidur, says Rashi, a third is the cap because beyond that is ostentation. Says Tosfos, there isn't a cap. You can spend more than it because it's not about aesthetics. Hidur is about spending money on doing the mitzvah better. And there's no limit to how much to spend on doing the mitzvah better, whatever you can afford. And all that we're told is up to a third that you pay for yourself. But beyond that, Hashem will pay you both in this world and in the world to come. You'll have olam haba because of that, and Hashem will repay you in this world as well. So that's the second view of Hidur. Rabbeinu Hananel has an amazing view of Hidur, where he says it's dependent, it's situational, it depends on your economic status in life. If you're going to spend on more than a third on a mitzvah, whether it's to make it more beautiful or whether it's to get something which is more halachically meticulous, if you're going to have to work harder to afford this mitzvah, you don't do that. There is no requirement that you stay at the office extra hours, or you work for longer hours in the field, or you drive your Uber or your taxi for longer hours to make the money to be able to pay for the esrog. You're not required to do that. Rather, go with the smaller etrog, go with the more ordinary mitzvah, and spend your time doing the things that are really important, not spending extra time on earning your living. So don't spend on Hidur mitzvah at the expense of the quality of your life. Don't spend on the quality of mitzvah at the expense of the quality of your life. Yes, you have to keep the mitzvah and you have to spend, but to put yourself under financial pressure to spend much more than that to get something better, that you're not required to do. But if you just happen to have a windfall, your shares just went shooting up, or you won a mifal apayis, you won a lottery, and you've got the money without any extra effort, you could easily afford the better mitzvah, or you're wealthy enough to be able to afford it. It's clear from Rabbi Hananel, the issue is don't put yourself under financial pressure to go and do a Hidur mitzvah. And the same would apply with kashrut. If you can afford a certain level of kashrut, and to go beyond that is more expensive. And with your expenses of educating your children and living in Eretz Yisrael and doing the things that you do, it's just too much. It's really hard to be able to keep kashrut at that level. You would have to work much harder. You would have to spend much more time at work, not required to do so. But if you've got the money, whether it came to you from a windfall or Baruch Hashem, you have blessing and your business is going well, and it's no big deal for you to buy the more expensive one, then of course you should do that. There's nothing that gets in the way. So it depends whether it's ostentatious or not, says Rabbeinu Hananel, depends on what you can afford. It's not an objective thing. We're not going to say that an etrog of $500 is ostentatious and a $100 is not ostentatious. If you're a millionaire, then $500 is not ostentatious. If you're a poor person, then $150 is ostentatious. So buy within your means, live within your means, says Rabbeinu Hananel. Not only in the physical world, but in the spiritual world as well. Live within your means. And the Shulchan Aruch brings both of these different views. The Rambam is very beautiful. The Rambam says at the end of Hilchot Isurei Mizbeach, Harotzeh lezakot atzmo. If a person wants to, now lezakot atzmo means two things. It means to have a zchut if you want to invest in your own spirituality. It also means lezakot to refine yourself and to raise your level. Yakuf yitzro hara v'yarchiv yado. A person should discipline his yetzer hara and be generous. V'yavi korbano min hayafeh hameshubach biyoter shebeoto amin sheyavi mimenu. When you're bringing a korban, when you're bringing a sacrifice, bring the finest that you can possibly bring from that particular species. If you have to bring a goat, find the best goat. If you're bringing a lamb, get the best lamb. Do it with the best that you can. Don't think to yourself, it's just a korban, it's going to get burnt on the mizbeach in any case. I'll just do any old thing. Do the best you can. We learn from Hevel and Cain. This is something we learn, that this is universal. This is not even a Jewish concept. It's Cain and Hevel before they were Jews. Hashem preferred the sacrifice of Hevel because he put more effort into stretching himself and bringing the finest of what he had. Whereas Cain gave whatever he had, he put it on the mizbeach. Hevel really invested in the very best he could afford. V'hu adin b'chol davar shehu l'shem hakel hatov, sheyeh min hana'eh v'hatov. And that's the case with anything that you're doing for or giving to Hakel Hatov, the good God, Hashem, who is good. Give him of what's good. If you see Hashem as the source of goodness, give him goodness. Give him the best you have. And that means the best of your effort, the best of your energy, the best of your attention, the best of your time, the best of your money, the best of everything. Give Hashem the best of everything. And we tend sometimes not to do that. If you ask yourself sometimes in the area of learning Torah, for example, what's the best time of your day? So for some people, it's first thing in the morning, early in the morning, their mind is clear, that's the best time. For some people, it'll be late at night when everybody's gone to sleep and it's quiet. What do you do with your best hours? Do your best hours go into business or do your best hours go into learning? Give Hashem of your best. You're going to daven with your best. If you're building a shul, build one like Ohel Ari. Build a nice one, build a grand one, make it more beautiful than your own houses. Don't just daven in some dump and think that's okay. If you can't afford better, that's fine. Daven wherever you can daven. But if you're able to get the community together and build a place that it's a pleasure to come into, where you're uplifting the tefillah and you're uplifting it. In other words, we see the importance of aesthetics. Last night I gave a shiur in Yerushalayim in a place that I've seen before, but I've never been into before. You're probably familiar with it. In Givat Shaul there's a complex of buildings there called Merkaz Sapir, if you've been there. It's the most terrible dump. I don't think I've ever seen such an ugly kiryah, such an ugly site of offices. And you know what? Inside, you're laughing about this, but it's true, right? I can't imagine of a more ugly site. And yet inside it, there are art galleries, there are libraries, there are jewelers. Betzalel has a studio there, a training thing. There's some of the most beautiful things happening inside the office. I gave the shiur last night. It was a beautiful office. And you look at it and you say, but what about the outside? Are you concerned about that? It's just the outside. It doesn't matter. We see it does matter. Aesthetics matters. If you're doing something for Hashem, if you're doing it for yourself, do what you want. If aesthetic matters to you, then put money into the aesthetics. If it doesn't matter to you, then it doesn't. But if you're doing it for Hashem, do the best. Make it look beautiful. Make a beit tefillah that is beautiful. And this applies also to Ben Adam Lechaviro. If you're going to give food to a hungry person, don't say, well, he doesn't mind. He hasn't got food in any case, so he'll be happy with whatever he gets. So I'll give him my leftovers. No, Ya'achil min hatov v'hamatok shebeshulchano. Give him the best of what you have on your table. Show him that honor. Give him that feeling. Even if it's the only time in his life he'll ever have that feeling. Give him that feeling. Enable him to experience that. That's what Hidur Mitzvah means. Kisa arum, if you're going to give clothing to a person who doesn't have clothing. Don't just give him your old leftovers which you're about to throw out. Get him a nice pair of clothes, set of clothes. Get him a nice suit. It's during this time, it's particularly relevant, isn't it? Because, excuse me, so many people are doing so many wonderful things in terms of supporting the people who need it, whether people who've been displaced from the south, just people who are having hard times, and so many people are doing the incredible work on a day-to-day basis, as you all know and are all doing. And there's a tendency, which is also okay, it's just not Hidur Mitzvah, it's a tendency, I've got a whole lot of stuff at home which I'm trying to get rid of in any case. This is a good opportunity. I can give it to somebody who needs it instead of throwing it out. Well, that's fine. That's also good, but that's not Hidur. Hidur is going beyond that. Hidur is giving something to somebody, something that is really beautiful, something that is really top class. Etc. That we give of our best to Hashem. And here we see this range of Hidur Mitzvah, where the Hidur Mitzvah means invest in the beauty, where the Hidur Mitzvah means invest in the meticulousness of halachic observance, where the Hidur means is limited because we don't want to be ostentatious, or it's unlimited because nobody can really see. You're talking about the quality of the halachic standard. You're not talking about anything externally. And then Rabbeinu Hananel, who walks this middle line and says the amount you spend on the hidur, whether it's aesthetics or it's meticulousness, depends on your economic situation. Don't put yourself under financial pressure. And then the Rambam, who says this doesn't only apply with lulav and tzitzis and esrog and things like that, it applies with all mitzvot, with everything you do for Hashem. Go the extra mile, put in a little bit of extra, do it in the best way you can. The last thing to look at is why this is in this piece of Gemara, what this has to do with the laws of Nezikin that we're busy discussing. And here there's a beautiful piece of Reb Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. Reb Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, I'm sure many of you know of. He didn't die long ago. I learned with him in Kol Torah Yeshiva when I was young. One of the great poskim of our generation. And he says, Nir'eh ha'shayachut lekan, it seems that its connection to this Gemara is mishum de la'elga b'tashlumin damnin on kesef or meitav osubin gam ken havi begeder hidur. What have we just been talking about? I have to pay this person damages. Am I going to pay him damages from my property in Fifth Avenue or from my property in Arkansas? He's going to get the same value. He deserves $10,000 worth of compensation. He is going to get $10,000 worth of compensation. It's not about the quantity. Even in that case, there's a need to give him extra quality. There's the need to go beyond and to give him, to invest, just to make an effort to give him more than the minimum. And when the Gemara went back, if we go back to the beginning of the sugya and said, here we are with Abai and Rabba asking the question, the Gemara answers there, Lo kashya kan midat or kan ba'korcho. If I willingly pay the damages and I'm saving you the indignity of going to court, then I pay you with whatever form I want, whatever is convenient to me. I owe you $10,000. I come and I tell you, you don't even know that my animals have been in your field. You're sitting in your office in New York, and you have fields in Arkansas where I also have a field. That's a field I want to pay you from. And my animals in Arkansas walked onto your field in Arkansas and they destroyed your field. And I called you up the next morning and I said, I want you to know your field is destroyed, but don't worry. It was my animals who did it and I will pay you. You don't have to go to Beis Din. You don't have to go searching to find out who it is. You don't have to go through that indignity to claim from me. I am sending you a check today for $10,000. So I can pay any way I want. It doesn't matter. But if I don't own up and you have to go searching for me and you have to call me to court and you have to claim and you have to prove and you have to hire lawyers, then we penalize you with meitav, and we require that you give the very best of what you've got, and compensate the person not only for the damage you've caused to their property, but also to the damage you've caused to their dignity by forcing them to go through the legal system. So that's this piece of Gemara. Once again, although learning something relatively technical and legal, we just see some of the beauty of Torah and of the Gemara, how it weaves its way into everything we learn to show us how to live as a Jew, not just what to do in the unlikely event that your ox went into my field. I guess that's not likely to happen nowadays in Ra'anana. Or even any other kind of damages. There's much more to it than that. This is about the soul of Jewish life. When you learn Gemara, you're learning about the soul of Jewish life and how to live the soul of Jewish life. So we have a couple of minutes for any questions. Happy to take them. Try and stop sharing. Ari, were you saying something? You were muted. I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you with the funny noise as well, but we can hear you.
Yeah, all I said was thank you. Really appreciate it.
Okay, you're very welcome. Good, lovely to see you all, and look forward to seeing you again next week. Hashem, is that right, Rabhana?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you very much, Rabbi Lapin. Um, you spoke about giving one's best, and we definitely feel that you give us your best every time that you give your share. So thank you very much. It might not be your best. Who knows? You might have more than that, but it feels like you're giving your best.
Thank
So
you.
thank you. Toda rabba for another fascinating share.
All the best to you all, and all the best. Keep well.
Thank you. Thank you. We will reconvene in 15 minutes at 11 o'clock. I will give the share. Thank you very much.
Rav, a reminder to stop recording.
Thank you.